Welcome to the Cloud Computing Insider. This channel explores the ins and outs of cloud computing without an agenda. We look at what works and what does not, and the actual value of this technology in a balanced and information-forward way. If that interests you, please subscribe, like, and comment. I'm your host, Dave Linthicum, author, speaker, B-list geek. Let's get started. So I'm excited about this one because this one's near and dear to my heart. As you guys know, I teach a generative AI architecture course. And, have to go through this every time. In fact, I'm going to spend 4 hours today teaching that class. And this is something where is asked a lot. It's asked by people who are students of the arc, but it's also asked by enterprises out there trying to figure this out. So ultimately, generative AI is a game-changing technology. In other words, its ability to be leveraged as a force multiplier for businesses make it a high potential for business value and a high potential for strategic value for these enterprises out there. And so, however, some of the issues we're running into, some of these things have a tendency to be very complex. They're large-scale distributed systems. They're very data intensive. They use lots of data, use lots of processor time, in some cases, specialized processors. So ultimately, we kind of have to get around that. Now, one of the things I tell people out there is that the ability to get around that is to make sure you're leveraging the right platforms. It's very difficult to re-platform this stuff once you get it deployed. And so your ability to understand what the requirements are for those platforms and back the appropriate generative AI workloads into those things is key to this. So ultimately, I'm joining with a couple of speakers here, panelists, Adel Glick, Senior Director, AI Solutions, Dell Technologies, and Adel El Hallak, Senior Director at NVIDIA AI Enterprises. Welcome, guys.
Hey, good
Pleasure to be here.
Great. Adam, you go first. Tell us what you do during the day.
Well, when I don't have the great opportunity to speak to folks like yourselves and your audience, my day job here at Dell is I'm the Senior Director for AI Solutions and Data Management. That really means taking a look at how do we take all the great pieces that are parts of AI, put that together to make sure that we can deliver to our customers and people that use it. The easiest, best way is to access AI, generative AI, all the different transformational technologies that are part of that.
Yeah. I don't want to use Adam's exact words, but very close. So I head up product management for NVIDIA AI Enterprise. But I typically start off any engagement by telling folks that there's no product called NVIDIA AI Enterprise. It's a licensing mechanism to get access to all of NVIDIA's SDKs, microservices, and libraries with production-grade security and the SLAs and SLOs around for support.
So what we're going to try to do here is demystify how to make this stuff work, which is a core reason to pay attention to what we're saying here, because a lot of these things out there are not necessarily getting to a successful deployment. I mean, I'm not going to go over the statistics out there, but there's more people who are not getting the ROI out of generative AI systems than are, and that's a bit concerning, and especially when you consider the amount that's at stake, your ability to have strategic applications that are truly going to be a force multiplier for the business, and the amount of money this stuff costs to deploy. And so we have to be very careful in how we're leveraging this technology and how to find value in it. I don't think that's being discussed enough these days. That's why I'm glad to be here with my panelists. So ultimately, we need to consider the demands on the requirements of the system. These are going to be high-end workloads. They're going to use specialized processors. They're going to use a lot of storage. They're going to use a lot of integration, by the way. Information has to flow back and forth, both in the inference process and the training process. So there's plenty of things that you have to do to bring this together into an integrated infrastructure. And so we need to make sure we're thinking through that, which is why we're having a great discussion here today. So I'll go ahead and put it out there. Adam, you go first. Why is generative AI game-changing right now? Why are people looking at it as something that's so important? I know it's been around for 2 years, but it seems to gain in importance each and every day.
Wow, big question. If I think about generative AI and what is making it such an incredible opportunity out there, it's because for the first time, you really can interact with computer systems in natural language. And you can leverage the power that those systems have. And so, I mean, if you think about just the systems that people use personally, go and, play with, ChatGPT, say, for instance, and all of a sudden you can just ask it a question and get an answer back. And there's a bunch of companies, they're not the only one, obviously, but there's all these tools that are out there that people are doing it. That radically shifts people's interactions with data and information and systems. And that is what's game changing here, is the ability for these systems to generate responses, to generate, visual information, and just process those things in ways that formerly, either were not possible or required you to have really, really specialized skills, large teams, build custom applications. All of those things get a lot easier. It's like this magic skeleton key to unlock the powers of technology and make them more accessible to more people than ever before. That's, I think, the big game-changing piece in all of this.
Same question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to build on what Adam actually said, right? We had that ChatGPT moment in November 2022 when the entire world woke up to the power of transformers, what deep learning is. Even my parents, who for the longest time had no idea what I actually did, finally understood when they engaged with a ChatGPT, right, what the power of deep learning is. But I think since November of 2022, right, that progress is accelerated significantly, right? We went from LLMs, and they add value right away, as Adam rightfully pointed out. But how can you ground LLMs with your enterprise data as well, right? Retrieval augmented generation came to be. So LLMs are great, but what if I can ground it with the data and actually conversate, talk to my data, my enterprise data? And even since RAG's become, I want to say, almost table stakes nowadays, you're looking at now building on that through agentic AI as well, right? So in addition to being access your corpus of data, being able to talk to different systems across your organization. It's just accelerating our capabilities and driving productivity gains, frankly, that I haven't seen before.
Wow, you both gave amazing answers. I love that. So what are some of the key challenges organizations are facing when they're implementing this? So what's kind of becoming the barriers to success here? Adam, I'm going to go to you first.
Sure. So if I can use an analogy, think of it a little bit like people's eyes are often bigger than their stomachs. They look at it and it's easy to imagine the amazing things they can do and realize that it takes planning and work to still make that happen. It's still not just push button easy. Lots of us working on trying to get it there, but you have to do it. It's like buying exercise equipment. You can buy yourself a bunch of exercise equipment, but if you don't use it, if you don't know how to, if you don't have a coach, if you don't guide yourself through that, you're not going to get the result that you want. The same is true when you think about AI. You can buy the systems or go and get the software or get the licenses or whatever you want to do. But if you're not actually mindful about how you put it together. And so what I typically see when I'm working with our customers is, hey, do they have their data? And do they have their data in the right ways and to access it? Have they managed that data in a way that makes it easy for them to use it? Do they have a clear understanding of which projects they want to do and how they want to use those pieces? What are the outcomes they're expecting? How do they put those together? Doing that planning piece up front is really, really important to getting good outcomes at the end. Dave, you mentioned that there's a lot of AI projects people spin up and then they kind of fall off. And a lot of times it's doing that upfront planning, making sure you've got the right people, trying to not do 1,000 things, but really pick what are the key ones you want to do. Focus on those, build that skill set, get used to it, understand the tools, the technology, and then grow from there. You crawl, walk, run. And the faster you get on that path of crawl, walk, running and building this and getting used to it, the more you're going to get value out of it and the more success your organization is going to have with it.
Great answer. And so Adel, same thing to you, but tell us what you guys are doing with Dell right now and how NVIDIA and Dell are teaming up to kind of deal with this stuff in terms of providing a platform to make this happen for the enterprises.
Yeah, I mean, as it relates to some of the challenges, right? Going back to this point about data, because fundamentally data is at the core of a lot of these capabilities. And so we want to enable enterprises to bring the compute, the algorithms, and the goodness to where the data resides, as opposed to forcing them to take that data elsewhere. And so that's why I think our partnership with Dell is so critical, is because it allows us to come into the enterprise and meet them behind their VPC, right? Such that the data doesn't have to leave the network. I'm a certainly big believer in the focus on one use case, right? Get that one use case right before scaling to others. And again, as Adam says, it's not just what data do you have, but what is your evaluation data set, right? What are the KPIs that you're chasing, right, before undertaking these projects? And yes, this stuff is certainly complex, right? And this stuff can be costly as well. And so what are the things that we're doing in collaboration with Dell? Well, as I said earlier, our microservices aren't tied to any particular environment, right? And so we allow those microservices to go where your data resides. And inferencing of these GenAI models, right? Making that efficient in workflows where multiple of these models are called a problem we looked to address. And so we have what we call NIM, which are inference microservices for open source GenAI models. And what we do is, the way I describe this to a layman person is, it's an opinionated way for running inference for a given GenAI model as efficiently as possible. And that's a point in time statement, which means over time we continue to optimize through software, right? The inference of a given model. And so you could take these models and deploy them on your favorite Dell platform to build these different workflows. But microservices alone and inferencing alone isn't enough, right? We spoke about, going from just LLM inference or GenAI to retrieval augmented generation and beyond. And so what we do is we also publish what we call blueprints, which is we show enterprises, we show our users how you take our different microservices, whether that's an inference microservice for generating tokens, or an embedding model and a re-ranking model to put in front of your vector data store for retrieving that information. We show enterprises how you construct these different microservices to deliver on very specific outcomes, right? And so we call those blueprints. They're know-how reference workflows optimized on the Dell platform to show enterprises, frankly, how to make the most of NVIDIA AI Enterprise, right, in their domain.
Yeah. If I could add on to that, because Adele brought up some great points about, we were talking about like, what are the challenges with it? A lot of the work that our organizations are doing together is about how do we simplify a lot of those pieces. And so NVIDIA has created some incredible software, the NIMs they have, the NEMO framework. There's just tons of great software that's been built. We've done a ton of the work on the hardware side. Hey, what are the different hardware pieces, and not just building great systems? Of course, we always do that. Like that's what Dell does. But how do you integrate those pieces? What does it mean when you're doing that at rack scale, when you're doing it at multiple racks? What happens with the networking that you need to do with that and the management pieces of all of those? And then how do you deploy that software? So how do you get that software, make sure all the drivers, all the compatibility, everything works together? Like these are the devils in the details when people go into it of like, hey, that's why it's a crawl, walk, run. What we do is we offer an accelerator for that, basically, that we have a tremendous partner ecosystem. We've got professional services that will come in, that will help you plan, go through and do your strategization, help you doing the implementation. We've got software tools to help make deploying the NVIDIA tools as easy as possible. And then Adele talked about the blueprints, which are kind of like sample code pieces to go do a lot of common workloads. Then our services organization has gone in, taken the NIMs and the blueprints and turned those into actual offers that people can buy and implement. And so people can go in and they can get the whole package, well integrated, easy to deploy, to make that as fast as possible to get to what they want to do, which is not digging through a bunch of software or not going and setting up a bunch of hardware. It's actually using these systems to create better outcomes for their customers. And so what we've done together and what our organizations continue to do is how do you integrate those pieces and make it as easy as possible to get to that point where people want to be, which is getting value out of AI systems, not learning and setting them up.
Yeah, and let's get to the core reason we're here, to tell people how to do this stuff correctly. And I think that's something that's missing out there in the zeitgeist in terms of people who are building and deploying these systems. Certainly, I see it in my practice, and I see it in my teaching. So ultimately, and I heard this from a mentor many years ago, you need to make complex things simple, Dave. That's ultimately what IT needs to do. Don't make complex things complex, so you're not necessarily solving the problem. So we're moving forward with that kind of, that kind of understanding. How do we do things like harness open source ecosystems and leverage those effectively? And so, Adam, I'm going to go back to you and let me know what you think.
Open ecosystems are a core part of our strategy at Dell, just broadly as we think about what we do. And we partner with lots of organizations. NVIDIA does a great job of actually mixing both open and proprietary, that they have both. They've done a ton of work to make a lot of those things available in the open ecosystem. And we leverage as much of that as we can. We know that there is no one answer, one button that people push for AI or ML. Like it's really a category. So whether you're using TensorFlow or using JAX as part of PyTorch, you're in MXNet. I mean, there's tons and tons of these different pieces. And what's the right answer for the framework and the tools you want to use varies by workload and by organization. And so we look at how do we make it easy to deploy those things? How do we make sure they all work together? How do we take care of all those things that IT folks spend so much of their time doing, of like, how do you stitch it together? How do you make sure it works? How do you worry about the licensing and how do people access all that kind of stuff? How do we make that easy? How do we take that work off people's plates so they can spend their time looking and saying, okay, I want to use Nemo. I want to use, there's, dozens of NIMs at this point. How do I use the right NIM, and how do I deploy that as quickly as possible? How do I get my models from Hugging Face, and go and just how do we make all those things as fast and easy as possible so that people don't spend their time doing it? And that's the work that Dell has been doing, and we've been partnering with our friends at NVIDIA to make that as easy as possible, because all of us want those easier outcomes.
Well, I love that answer. Adel, what do you think?
No, totally agree. There was a time when my kids thought that I was a vet, because all my kids would hear me talk about would be llamas, would be falcons, would be black mambas. Those are all names of open source models, right? One of the most powerful slides that I always put up is demonstrating the NIM ecosystem, right? And a lot of folks think of NIM being an NVIDIA thing, but in fact, what NIM is taking open source community models, models from our partners that could be proprietary, but nonetheless, right? That we put the models inside the container so they're portable, and we make it such that these models run as efficiently as possible, right, on a GPU, and we continuously patch backport fixes into that runtime for those given models. And as I said earlier, right, we continue to optimize those runtimes on that given GPU for those models, such that the performance gets better over time. And so open source, we love open source. You see us open source some of our models. And that's what's driving a lot of this energy, innovation in the ecosystem, right? It's super exciting.
It is super exciting. And I think that, people are starting their journey now, and they're figuring this stuff out as they go along. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think you can learn from the successes of other folks, and that's why we're sharing some information here today. So let's talk about AI accelerators. Your ability to, fast track your AI system. I always call it the easy button for AI, even though people hate that. But ultimately, that's what people are looking for. They're looking for the path of least resistance, to use technology in a simplified way to get to their end state solution, and not after 5 years, after 5 months, or even, 5 weeks in some instances. So Adel, I'm going to go to you first. Tell us about AI accelerators and how they play in this whole process.
Well, I mean, I think, it is no longer the case that our GPUs, right, are strictly from a training perspective. I think accelerators are synonymous now with whether you're doing training, right, or you're doing post-training, or you're doing inferencing or test time scaling nowadays. I think accelerators are fundamental to every one of those phases. So there was a time, and continues to be a time, when a lot of large enterprises are training foundation models, right? They're training foundation models, and the same way our education curriculum continues to evolve, training these models will continue to evolve in terms of the type of data we train them for. You need very strong accelerators for those. But even when you've trained your model, we're doing a lot of experiments between different sizes of models, because the larger the model is, the more of the AI accelerators that you need. And sometimes fine-tuning, right, what we call post-training a model, a smaller model translates to as good as accuracies as some of those larger models, but it will run much more efficiently, right? Where I think AI accelerator is going to become increasingly important now is in what we call test time scaling, which is about reasoning, right? You see a lot of excitement as it relates to these reasoning models, right? Agentic capabilities as well. And so we see any given workflow, even internally, it's not just one LLM call that you make, right? Even though it's a smaller model, you're making potentially 17, 18 calls to an LLM for a given use case. And so whether you're training foundational models, you're doing some kind of fine-tuning, supervised, tuning LoRa adapters like post-training, or just running inference, AI accelerators play a big role across all these three different scaling laws.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that we see just demand for these are growing. We talk a lot about where people are on their AI journey, and you see people kind of start and they're like, okay, we're going to get some AI systems, so we're going to do it, and like it's this separate set of systems. So that's where a lot of folks are kind of starting to go to. And you look out in the future, you don't have to look too far, where you see that AI is going to be built into everything, and you're going to have more and more people creating their own models. So, LLMs, people are familiar, the large language models, but as Adel was referring to, there's SLMs, small language models, as people create models that are specific to their particular data, their particular industry and such. Those are going to run in very different form factors. And so you're going to see the accelerators and the AI workloads start to show up a lot in the inferencing that's happening, and that happening all over the place. We talk a lot about at the edge on clients as well as in applications and servers. And so you're going to see that kind of transition. What's at the heart of that is really accelerators and the demand for all those accelerators. You talk about the growth that you see in these things. One of our customers, McLaren Racing, they do some amazing stuff. I mean, their cars, someday I hope to get to actually drive one, but you look at like what they do, they're using the Dell AI factory with NVIDIA. They're using our pieces to go in and create synthetic data and model what happens in their race days. They literally do 50 million aerodynamic simulations over a race weekend. As they tweak the car, as they move vents slightly, as they print out, they go and 3D print things. They run these simulations. They create digital twins. They run tremendous numbers of them and they tweak it. And that's how they get the edge in their racing world. Now, that's just one company and one example. But what you're going to see is more and more organizations be able to take advantage of the kind of computing power and the acceleration power that comes in that AI is going to make available.
Yeah, I think that's going to be amazing. I think I still want that discount on the McLaren, by the way, Adam. So maybe you can work that for me behind the scenes.
Yeah, he promised if I do this interview, he's going to get me one.
Wow.
I'm getting signed up for things. Wow.
Oh, Adam, that's what David told me last time in our prep session.
I'll make you this promise, Adel. If I get a McLaren, I will let you borrow it. How about that?
Peace.
So let's switch focus to agentic AI, which is a big push right now. People are leveraging autonomous agents to deploy these AI systems, and it's a mix of generative AI and your ability to leverage small language models and large language models. So people are looking for a blueprint to get them to a successful end state. And so what are, agentic AI, what are the blueprints out there to successfully make this stuff work? Where do we find these? How do they work? Tell us about it. Adel, I'm going to do you first.
Yeah, I mean, let's unpack or demystify, to use your word, David, a little bit about what agentic AI or agents are, right? They're certainly a hot topic nowadays. I kind of look at agents as having three foundational pieces. Number one is they have to have a strong reasoning model at its core, right? And we talked about that just now. R1, DeepSeek's R1 is certainly a model that's drawing a lot of attention because of its efficiencies, its reasoning capabilities. And so agentic systems have the ability to reason, to define a plan, and then self-critique themselves as part of that plan. And they go through this iterative react process: reason, act, reflect, reason, act, reflect. So number one is they have great reasoning models. Number two is they have access to tools, right? So it is no longer just, hey, they can generate tokens. They can actually go take actions on your behalf. You can go access a calculator if need be, a weather app. I'm going to even argue that a database is a tool that they could access, the ability to go fetch data, right, through retrieval augmented generation. So they've got reasoning models, right, that allow them to devise plans and self-critique themselves. They have access to tools that allow them to take action as opposed to just generating, tokens. And the third piece is they have, they're context aware, right? They're able to retain, previous states. They're able to carry out multi-turn conversations, right? So they have that context-aware memory, if you will. And so we provide the building blocks, right, for building, your agents or your team of agents. And it's never just a single agent that you deploy, right? There are always sub-agents that are specialized in sub-functions, right? I always think of it in the context of, how is agentic AI changing my world? And as I said earlier, what is it that I do? Well, I provide a licensing mechanism to get access to NVIDIA's microservices and SDKs. One of the biggest things that we do is, because these microservices are portable, right? They could run on your Dell workstation or run on your Dell server. It is very important that we're continuously updating, securing, and patching those runtimes, right? Because they're made up of hundreds of OSS packages. And so identifying patches for vulnerabilities in a given runtime, that's a tedious job, right? That a lot of my team folks do. And a lot of that is going on these, scanning your runtime, then going on these different databases to understand if a given vulnerability has a patch and what are the dependencies to be able to exploit that. It's a lot of internet hunting in all these, databases and feeds. Well, what if you can deploy an agent that actually does that scavenger hunt on your behalf, right? hey, for this given vulnerability, what's out there in the wild for these, across these different vulnerability data sites. And so we use agents in that regard. Hey, go come back to me and let me know if a patch actually exists. And for this vulnerability to be exploited, what are the conditions? And then I have a different agent that actually looks internal to the runtime, internal to the container, and tells me, hey, right, you do have these prerequisites or dependencies to be able to exploit it, right? Or you don't have them, so maybe you shouldn't worry about them. And so we have all these different little agents, right, that are built of this one blueprint, right? One blueprint that gives you the building blocks of being able to deploy these agents. I can't resist but utilize a line that Jensen, our CEO, used at CES, at his keynote in CES. And he talked about how the IT department's now becoming the HR department, because the IT department's managing all these little agents that are out there, right? You got your security analyst agent, right? You got your doc writer agents. We have an agent that goes and looks at all the bugs that we have, right, for a given software, and helps us summarize certain trends, etc. So I kind of like that phrase, right? That your agents, that your IT department now is becoming your HR department, managing all these agents deployed internally at the enterprise.
Well, I always told my students, when you think of agentic, think of it like a company. In other words, the agents are the people, they're the personalities, they're the personas, and they're able to work together to achieve a goal, and they kind of get it then. So Adam, do you have anything to add?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a great way of like defining those pieces of like, that generative AI gives you data and agentic AI gives you results. It makes decisions. Data versus decisions, if you want to think about it that way. And Dell, you're right that like you're going to end up with a network of these things. It's not going to be one that does everything. It's that you're going to have specialized ones, and they're going to work together just the same way that people within organizations do, and all those pieces. And what we're doing is we look at building out this whole AI factory with NVIDIA, is creating a platform that all these different agents can run on and all these different systems. So it's not, hey, you've got one specialized system. It's you have a platform to run all of these. Adel talked about how the NIMs are containerized. That makes them very portable and you can move them around, because different organizations are going to different types of agents that they need. But there are going to be things that are somewhat consistent across what they do. Just like there are, no matter what organization you're in, you have HR departments, you have support teams, you've got sales teams. Like there are things that are going to be generalized about those pieces, and then people are going to specialize them to help them with it. And that's the kind of thing of like, you can build on top of this platform and then have these agents go in and make decisions. That's the big change, is going from just, giving you stuff and letting you make the decision to empowering the machine to make decisions on what it's going to do.
Oh, there is a world where my inbox has more emails from agents than I do from my own team, and that world is not far away. Agents letting me know, hey, new vulnerabilities in a given container. By the way, I've already alerted my friend, the other agent, to go fix it. I'm just letting you know, right? That world certainly exists.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be less email, but we'll see. I think it's going to be more.
I was about to say, if it's done the task, then I hope that it can also like file that email out of my inbox so that I never have to see it in the first place.
You're giving me an idea for another agent, Adam. Another agent blueprint.
Sign me up for the beta. I'm there for it. We'll run it on top of the AI factory.
Love it.
So Adam, I'm going to get back to you. So what is Dell saying about simplified AI at scale? What are they saying processes you need to run? What technology stack, methods, things like that? I'd love to get the secrets.
Sure. So I mean, we've really looked at like, how do you help people scale this from what you're going to do on your desktop, and how people can get started. People can start with the tools that are part of NVIDIA's AI enterprise and go and build what they need at the desktop level. And then how do you scale that up? Because scaling up, if you worked in IT for any period of time, scaling up is a non-trivial challenge. And how do we turn that into a trivial challenge? And that's what we're looking at we basically have done kind of t-shirt sizing when you want to do a deployment for an AI factory. And so you can choose, what do you want, from extra small all the way up to extra large, and then you can scale within that. And so we have organizations where, again, people are doing things just at the desktop. I remember, Adel was talking about, people think of him as a vet. And I remember when I had Llama, and I just, I took a container with Llama and I was running it on my own personal PC just to be able to work with some of this technology. And you scale that all the way up to, customers that we have that literally buy racks and racks and racks full of these systems. And you think about, okay, if you just bought, 200 racks. And each of those racks has, 4 systems in it. And each one of those systems has 8 GPUs in it. And then the network, like, how do you pull that all together into a single system? Like, that is a ton of engineering work. And what we've been doing is trying to make that as easy as possible, make it so that people can roll things out. Like you saw the incredible work that was done with XAI, and how fast they rolled out the Grok system. Like, that is historically unheard of for people to be able to roll out systems and infrastructure at that scale, at that speed. But that's what we're doing for our customers to help make sure that those kind of things can happen, because that's where you get magic, where you come up with something. Someone does, hey, I built this great agent. I built this awesome model. It works out. I want to scale this up. Okay, what's your scaling timeline? And how do you take that scaling timeline from being a question of what's build out and deploy and all that to, hey, I put it in the system and we say go, and it can just scale out across that because you have a scalable factory model that allows you to just bump it up within your infrastructure automatically.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I think it's important that the platform players that you deal with have a plan to make that happen. You guys aren't just selling processors or storage, you're selling solutions, and your ability to define what those solutions are and the path to make that happen is way important, as I'm finding moving forward. All right, so let's put our crystal balls in front of us and closing discussion. What's next for Gen AI? What's coming in the next few years? And where are we going? So, Adam, you want to tell me?
Sure. Well, I mean, if I take the safe bet to look at and just say, like, the reality is we're very early on in generative AI. And over the next few years, what you're going to see is this really start to roll out at scale as people see what are the use cases that are delivering the most value to organizations and their customers. Like, that's the safe, easy bet, and where that going to happen? Like, you're going to see that with coding assistants, the code assistants that are out there. You're going to see those become ubiquitous in development. You're going to see ones that are there for sales and customer support and internal HR systems, like all of that. Those will become, LLMs and SLMs that people interact with, and those will become ubiquitous through most organizations. I'd say, 5 years from now, I would be surprised if, less than half of organizations haven't already adopted it and the rest are in that process. If you look kind of further out and say, what's more cutting edge? What you're going to see is more accelerators, a explosion in terms of the computing power that those provide, and the places where AI gets integrated to just become everywhere. I talked about before where you had kind of, okay, we've got like, here's our AI system or here's our rack, and really AI will just become something that's baked in the same way that, like, for those of us old folks, you might remember a math coprocessor that you used to have to buy to put in your system, and or a sound card. You'd buy a separate sound card. Sometimes people still do, but for the most part, like, those are baked in. AI and acceleration will just become something that is expected in every computing system that people have, because it'll be baked into every workload that people are using. And that's really where we're going to go. And we're going to see the big transformation that really hasn't happened yet. And that's going to happen in the coming years.
Cool. Adel?
Again, I'm gonna build on what Adam said, right? I think, but I think it also applies to the personal front. I think we're just starting to scratch the surface in terms of what agentic AI can deliver. And I think both on a personal front and enterprise front, folks are going to have their digital companions with them that understand their preferences, their needs, can go execute tasks on their behalfs. I think that's gonna, and I said there's going to be teams of these different agents inside of an enterprise. And I think that's within a year or a couple of years. I think where things are headed that are quite interesting from an innovation perspective, right? I kind of look at deep learning or AI across 4 phases, if you will. There was, perception when we first started, right? AlexNet, and kind of when deep learning and deep neural networks became a start in 2012, being able to view things at above human levels, right? Understand, see, etc. Then you had the transformer and kind of the BERT moment, or the generative AI moment, right? That became a thing in November 2022. We're at the dawn of agentic AI. But again, if you go back to what was announced at CES about a month ago, I think physical AI is the next thing, representing the world, right? Accurately in the digital world, I think is going to be super exciting. Building digital twins that understand gravity, right? That understand texture, etc. I think very exciting things in that domain happening as well. But in the meantime, just from an enterprise perspective, I think the efficiency gains we're going to see, I think the improvements in certain experiences that frankly we might have struggled with, I think all those get resolved now with agents. So quite exciting time. Adam, he's making a joke about our age. Super busy nowadays, right? Definitely feel like our times accelerated like crazy, and can be more excited to have partners like Dell in this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I would have to add would be there's going to be an expansion of GenAI ultimately into the edge computing world with something like Dell Native Edge. You can check out that technology, increasing adoption of agentic tools across industries, and we're using that for autonomous and semi-autonomous workflows, seeing huge expansion in agentic AI and people who are building these systems today and using a mix of models as well. And also new advancements. I mean, the GPUs are obviously getting better. The latest stuff from NVIDIA, the Blackwell GPUs and the impact on scalability. So now we have access to these things can finally take us a place. I've been doing AI since the 80s, and people always say, what's the difference between AI in the 80s versus AI now? We couldn't run anything. We had the ideas, but it wouldn't run on any processors. And if we did get it, would be billions of dollars to make it happen. So now we have the technology to make that happen. And next would be for proliferation of hybrid first strategies, ability to use a heterogeneous mix of technologies and platforms to solve this stuff. This thing is not going to exist only on one particular platform. This is going to exist on a variety of different platforms that are going to be purpose built, that are optimized for the particular use cases and how people are moving forward. Well, this is awesome discussion. So I just want to, let you guys know, check out Dell AI Factory with NVIDIA and use it for simplified, scalable, secure types of system developments, and certainly with leveraging generative AI and agentic AI. Look at the key accelerators out there and what people are leveraging. You got a great tutorial from our guest here and how to leverage those accelerators. What's real and what's not. There is no magic bullet out there. Your ability to look at and identify the right tools, techniques, and processes to make it happen are going to be the real accelerators moving forward. Also, make sure to focus on training, get folks in the organization and your culture shifted over to make that happen. So, and also look for partners. I mean, you saw this in the dynamics between our guest here, the collaboration between Dell and NVIDIA, to make generative AI easy and accessible for organizations is out there now. Give them a call and let them know what you're looking to do. And these guys have solutions that are ready to go today. As far as call to action, make sure to visit, Dell.com at the website I have on the screen for resources. You can also check out workshops. You can validate designs, and customer case studies are there. It's a wealth of information. I use it all the time. And I would like to invite you guys to explore Dell and NVIDIA's GenAI solutions, ultimately, as we talk, that are tailored for your specific needs. These are going to be bespoke things. This is not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution, but your ability to leverage the right platform as a force multiplier truly for your business to make generative AI work. And don't forget, like and subscribe and check out my other videos on this channel. Also, check out the other videos where Dell and NVIDIA industry experts join the discussion. So until next time, you guys stay safe. Cheers.
Take care.
You guys. Thank you. Have a good one.